Dad, you're a failure.
You've done nothing with your life. Ruby's voice cut through the dining room like a knife, sharp and deliberate. Every word carried the weight of years I'd spent trying and failing to earn their respect. Jessica laughed, her tone cold, metallic, her fingers curling around her wine glass like it was a talisman against the world.
He's right, you know, she said, each word calculated to sting. I felt the familiar burn of humiliation creeping up my chest, but I smiled anyway. A small, deliberate smile that didn't reach my eyes.
My fingers brushed the phone in my pocket, steady despite the storm inside me. I pulled it out slowly, feeling the device as if it were a lifeline. With a few taps, I brought up the screenshot that would finally shift the balance. I held it up, letting the light from the screen play across their faces. Ruby froze, her fork suspended in mid-air. Jessica's smirk faltered, eyes widening. The room fell into a charged silence, broken only by the relentless ticking of the old clock on the wall.
I didn't speak. I didn't need to.
My years of endurance, of patience, were speaking louder than any words I could muster. The dining room smelled of overcooked steak and lingering resentment. Ruby's fork clattered onto her plate, the noise sharp as a gunshot, and her eyes flamed with anger. "You're nothing, Dad. A nobody who's embarrassed us for years," she spat, her voice cracking under the force of her fury. Jessica, perched like a vulture across from her, sipped her wine, her smirk cutting cold as frost. "What did you expect, Ruby?" "He's always been a disappointment," she said, her manicured nail tapping against the glass like a cruel metronome. Their words hit me like punches, one after another, but I remained still.
Hands clenched under the table, heart pounding, I breathed through the venom.
I'd heard it all before, the jabs at my freelancing career, my quiet life in a creaking house that smelled of old wood and dust. I'd lived in their shadow, always trying to measure up. But tonight was different. Tonight their cruelty felt final, like a door had slammed shut on the man I had tried so hard to be. I stared at the crack running through my plate, jagged and uneven, a perfect mirror of my own fractured life. Each line reminded me of broken bonds, of sacrifices spent holding pieces together that could never truly heal. "You're just an old man rotting in that closet of an office," Ruby spat, her words sharp and raw. Jessica chuckled behind her glass, her laughter cold as the wine she drank. I didn't answer. Not that. My chest burned, the weight of years pressing down on me, but my face remained calm, neutral, a mask perfected through decades of swallowing humiliation. I thought of the nights I had worked late, the money I'd spent paying for Ruby's college tuition, the jewelry I'd bought for Jessica while she flaunted it to her golf club friends.
"All of it, all for this. You're a burden," Jessica said, her voice low and almost bored.
"We barely scraped by because of you." That was it. The dam inside me broke. I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing the cracked screen of my old phone.
"Heavy not with weight, but with truth."
"You think you know me?"
I said, my voice steady, unwavering. The reactions were instant.
Ruby's mouth fell open, her hand flying to her lips. Jessica's glass slipped, shattering on the floor, red wine spreading like spilled blood across the hardwood. The tick of the old clock became the only sound, a heartbeat marking the rhythm of revelation.
I didn't need to explain.
Whatever they saw on that screen, every detail, every undeniable truth, did the talking for me. I stood slowly, my chair creaking under the movement, and walked toward the door. Each step echoed in the hall, heavy, deliberate.
I didn't look back. I didn't need to.
Their shock, their disbelief, their fury, all of it belonged to them, and I was finally free of it. Outside, the air was cool, a faint scent of rain carrying itself into the night. I breathed deeply, letting the tension leave my shoulders, letting years of pent-up frustration dissolve into the darkness. The screenshot was more than evidence. It was a key, a reminder that my life, my work, my dignity was mine and mine alone. For the first time in decades, I felt that quiet, steady pulse of control.
Not revenge, not triumph, but liberation.
I walked on, each step a silent promise to myself. Never again would I let their judgment, their greed, their cruelty define me.
I was done carrying their shame.
I was done living in their shadows. I reached my office, a cramped room stacked with dusty books, yellowed papers, and a wheezing computer that seemed as old as my patience. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing out their voices, their sneers, their chaos. I sank into my chair, the phone still warm in my hand, like it carried the energy of the confrontation with it. My heart pounded, but not with fear.
No, this was different.
For the first time in years, I felt awake, alive, like I'd stepped out of the shadows and into a space that belonged only to me. I set the phone on the desk, its cracked screen catching the dim glow of the single overhead bulb. A small, jagged fracture ran across it, a scar that somehow made it feel more honest, more real. They had no idea what I'd been hiding, what I'd built quietly while they mocked me, assumed I was weak, assumed I was nothing. But soon, they would understand everything. From the kitchen came the chaos of spilled wine, the scrape of chairs, the sharp, frantic voices that had once pierced my confidence and left me hollow. Jessica stood by the sink, gripping the counter with hands pale from tension, her blonde hair loose, tumbling over her shoulders in disarray. Panic flickered in her eyes, betraying the smug composure she usually wore like armor. "What was that, Ruby?" she snapped, her voice tight, trembling at the edges. Ruby, pacing like a panicked predator, held her phone close to her chest, fingers swiping the screen over and over, as if motion alone could erase the truth.
It's fake, she muttered.
It has to be.
He's bluffing. No way, Ruby whispered, disbelief cracking her voice. Mom, Dad, with that? No way. Her shrill laugh hit the walls of the house, but her eyes betrayed her.
Darting nervously toward the hallway where I had vanished. I sat in my office, the door locked, the silence thick and comforting. My phone rested on the desk, dark now, quiet after having done its work. Outside, their voices carried through the thin walls, sharp, frantic, fractured by fear and confusion. "He's playing us," Jessica shouted louder now, the edge of hysteria in her voice. "He's always been weak."
This is just another pathetic trick. Her words stung, but I didn't flinch.
I had heard worse.
I had lived through worse.
My fingers tapped the desk absent-mindedly, tracing the smooth, worn wood shaped by countless restless nights and endless thinking. They thought they knew me.
They thought I was nothing.
They thought I was powerless. Tonight, they would learn how wrong they had been. A fist pounded on the door. Ed. Jessica's voice was sugar-coated, but it dripped with venom.
Open the door?
"We need to talk."
I didn't move.
Ruby's voice joined in,
High and jagged.
"You think you can scare us with some photoshopped garbage?"
I'll post this online, Dad. Everyone will know you're a liar.
Her thread hung in the air, but it was empty. She wouldn't post anything, not yet. Not until she knew what I had. I leaned back in my chair, the springs creaking. The office was a mess. Books piled on shelves. A family photo turned face down on the desk.
I hadn't looked at it in months.
The memory of their laughter at dinner twisted in my gut, but I pushed it down. They wanted answers.
They'd get them, but on my terms. Ed, don't be ridiculous, Jessica called, her tone shifting to fake concern.
"Whatever that was, we can work it out." Her fist hit the door again, softer this time. I pictured her out there, her lips pursed, her eyes calculating. She'd always been good at playing the victim when it suited her. Ruby muttered something, her voice too low to catch, but I heard the clack of her nails on her phone, probably drafting a post she'd never send.
You'll see, I said, my voice low but firm, loud enough to carry through the door.
Your time's coming. Silence followed. I imagined their faces, Jessica's eyes narrowing, Ruby's mouth twitching. He didn't know what to do with me now. The man they'd mocked for years wasn't caving. Jessica tried the knob, the door rattling in its frame.
You can't hide forever, she hissed.
Her footsteps retreated, sharp heels clicking on the hardwood. Ruby lingered. I heard her breathing quick and uneven. "This isn't over," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Then she was gone, her steps fading. I picked up the phone, its weight grounding me. The screenshot was still there, waiting. I didn't need to look at it again.
I knew what it meant.
My gaze fell on the family photo, its frame coated in dust. For a moment I saw us as we were smiling together before the cracks spread. Then I blinked and the memory was gone. They'd made their choice.
Now I'd make mine.
The office was dark, saved for the flicker of my ancient computer screen. I sat alone, the silence heavy, broken only by the hum of the machine. My fingers brushed the edge of a USB drive, a cold wallet, small and unassuming, tucked in a drawer for years. It held everything.
I leaned back, my mind slipping to 2011 when it all began.
The memory hit sharp and clear. I was 48, hunched over a clunky monitor in a cramped office that smelled of stale coffee and paper. The screen glowed with a forum post about Bitcoin.
A new risky idea.
The future, some guy called it.
I scrolled, my heart racing.
I'd always been cautious, but something about it felt right. Jessica's voice echoed from the past, shrill through the phone.
"You're wasting money again, Ed. We need that for Ruby's school."
I ignored her, my fingers flying across the keyboard. $5.90 for 59 coins. I hit buy and smiled, a spark of hope in my chest. Back then I thought I was building something for us, for Ruby's future, for Jessica's dreams. I worked late, fixed networks, paid bills.
Ruby, just 13, barely noticed me.
"Dad, whatever," she'd say, eyes glued to her phone. Jessica wanted more.
Always more.
Karen's husband bought her a diamond, she'd complain, her voice sharp as a knife.
I kept quiet, my secret tucked away.
The coins sat in the cold wallet, forgotten as life ground on. Now in 2025 I pulled the USB drive from the drawer. Its plastic was scratched, but it felt alive in my hand. My office was a tomb. Dusty shelves, a family photo I couldn't bear to face. The computer wheezed as I plugged in the drive. My hands shook, not from fear, but from certainty. I typed the password, each keystroke deliberate. The screen blinked, then loaded. There it was, 59 BTC. I did the math in my head. At today's price, nearly $6 million. I exhaled, the number sinking in. 6 million. More than enough to change everything.
My eyes stung, not with joy, but with rage. I'd given them everything, years, money, my pride.
And they'd spit it back. Ruby's voice at dinner calling me a failure. Jessica's laugh, cold and cruel.
They didn't deserve this.
Not anymore. I leaned forward, the chair creaking. The screen's glow lit my face, casting shadows on the walls. I remembered the nights I'd spent learning, risking, hoping for them.
And they'd thrown it away. "You'll see," I whispered, my voice steady.
The wallet was real. The money was mine, and I knew exactly what to do with it. I unplugged the drive and slid it back into the drawer, its way to promise. The computer powered down, the hum fading to silence. My phone sat on the desk, its cracked screen catching the light. I picked it up, my thumb hovering over a number. An attorney I'd found weeks ago, just in case. My finger pressed call. The line rang once, twice. A voice answered, calm and professional. "Mr. Cunningham, how can I help?" I smiled, my eyes fixed on the phone.
"We need to talk," I said.
The attorney's office smelled of leather and ambition. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, glinting off a glass desk piled with papers. I sat across from Mr. Harlow, a man with a crisp suit and sharper eyes. My pen hovered over the contract, steady as my pulse. "Selling 5 coins will net you $500,000, he said, his voice clipped. "What's the next step?"
I signed mine, the ink flowing smooth.
Keep it quiet, I replied. "That's all for now," he nodded, sliding the papers into a folder. The deal was done. I left the office, my steps light on the polished floor.
Outside, Fairfield buzzed.
Cars hummed, leaves rustled in the June breeze. My phone stayed silent in my pocket, its cracked screen hiding the truth. 5 Bitcoin sold. $500,000, and Jessica and Ruby had no idea. The thought made my chest hum, not with pride, but with purpose. They'd mocked me for years, called me a failure. Soon they'd see. Back home, Jessica waited in the hallway, her arms crossed. Her blonde hair was pinned tight, but a strand hung loose, betraying her nerves.
Where were you?
She asked, her voice honeyed, but sharp like a blade dipped in sugar. Her bracelet jangled as she tapped her phone. I tossed my keys onto the table, the clink loud in the quiet house.
Out, I said, brushing past her.
The air smelled of furniture polish and tension. She followed, her heels clicking. Don't play games, Ed. I found that lawyer's card in your drawer. Her eyes narrowed, searching my face. I kept my expression blank, but inside I smiled. She'd been snooping just as I'd expected.
You're up to something, she hissed, stepping closer.
What is it? I shrugged, my silence a wall. You'll find out soon enough, I said, my tone calm, almost bored. Her lips pursed, her fingers twitching around her phone. I headed to the kitchen, pouring a glass of water. Jessica lingered in the doorway, her shadow stretching across the linoleum. You've never given me what I deserve, she said, her voice low, bitter. All those years scraping by while my friends lived better. I sipped the water, letting her words slide off me. She wanted wealth, status, the life she'd envied at the golf club. She'd never worked for it, but she blamed me.
Always me. I set the glass down, the clink sharp.
Things are about to change, I said, meeting her gaze. Her eyes widened just for a second before she masked it with a scoff. You change anything. She laughed, but it was brittle like glass about to crack.
I didn't answer. I didn't need to.
The seeds were planted. Later, I took a walk through the neighborhood, the dusk settling over manicured lawns. Jessica's car crept along a block behind, her headlights dim. She thought she was clever, tailing me like a detective in a bad movie. I kept my pace steady, my hands in my pockets.
Let her follow. Let her wonder.
She'd find nothing but questions. I stopped at the park, the air cool against my face. My phone buzzed once, a confirmation from Harlow. The funds were in my account. I pulled it out, dialed a number, and kept my voice low. It's just the start, I said. Behind me, Jessica's car idled, a silhouette stiff in the driver's seat. She was watching, but I was already miles ahead. The dining room was a battlefield. Cold coffee sat in mugs, the air thick with accusation. Jessica stood at the head of the table, her fist slamming down, rattling the spoons.
You're selfish, Ed, she shouted, her voice a whip, hiding things sneaking around. What are you doing to us?
Ruby slouched in her chair, her phone glowing, her fingers flying across the screen.
You're ruining everything, Dad, she snapped, her eyes flashing.
Everyone's going to know what a loser you are. Her words cut, but I sat still, my hands gripping the chair's edge. I'd walked into this ambush after my walk. Jessica's car trailing me home. Now they were unloading, their voices rising like a storm. You've always held us back, Jessica said, her bracelet clinking as she pointed.
Now you're playing some game. I won't stand for it. Her face was flushed, her eyes desperate. Ruby smirked, tapping her phone. Check this, she said, her voice dripping with scorn.
She held up the screen, a post she'd just published. My dad's a washed-up nobody. It read with a sad face emoji. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face blank. You think that hurts me? I said, my voice low, steady. Ruby's smirk faltered. Jessica stepped closer, her heels loud on the hardwood.
I'm done, Ed. I'll file for divorce.
You'll get nothing. Her thread hung heavy, but I didn't flinch. I'd heard her bluffs before. She wanted control, not freedom. Ruby scrolled her phone, muttering, "Why is no one liking this?" Her confidence cracked, her need for validation showing through. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness matching the mood. Their words were loud, but they were flailing, grasping at shadows. They didn't know about the bitcoins, the $500,000 sitting in my account. They didn't know I was building something bigger than their insults. Do what you want, I said, setting the mug down. It won't change a thing. Jessica's eyes blazed, her jaw tight.
You're impossible, she hissed, storming out, the door slamming behind her.
Eiley stayed, her fingers hovering over her phone. You're pathetic, she said, but her voice trembled. She wanted a reaction, a fight.
I gave her nothing.
I stood, the chair scraping, and looked at her.
You're digging your own hole, I said.
Her eyes widened, but she didn't answer. I walked out, their shouts echoing in my head, each one fueling my resolve. In the hallway, I pulled out my phone, its cracked screen catching the dim light. Their accusations were noise, nothing more. I'd spent years absorbing their scorn, but now I was moving and they couldn't stop me. I dialed my broker, keeping my voice low.
Time to start, I said, my eyes on the closed dining room door.
Ruby's post was still open on her phone, glowing like a weak spark. Let her post. Let them scream. I was already beyond their reach. The broker's office buzzed with quiet energy. Coffee scented the air. Screens flickered with stock charts. I sat across from Miss Carter, her glasses perched low as she typed. Selling 5 bitcoins, buying shares in next-gen tech, she said, her voice brisk. Risky but done. I nodded, my fingers tapping the armrest. Make it quick, I said. And keep it off the radar. She raised an eyebrow but complied, her mouse clicking.
$500,000 shifted silent as a shadow.
My plan was in motion. Back home, I locked myself in my office. The computers hummed my only company. The screen glowed as I opened an anonymous forum, my fingers steady on the keys.
Next gen's about to skyrocket, I typed. Insider tip by now.
I hit send, the post vanishing into the digital void.
A smile tugged at my lips.
Jessica's friend Susan had bragged about Next Gen at the golf club, and Jessica had listened, her eyes hungry.
She'd take the bait.
They all would. Later, I stood at a charity gala, the room alive with clinking glasses and soft laughter. White tablecloths gleamed, flowers perfumed the air. I donated $50,000 to a local shelter, and now people shook my hand, their smiles warm. Mr. de Cunningham. You're a blessing, a woman said, handing me a thank you letter. I nodded, the paper crisp in my hand. For years, I'd been invisible. Now eyes followed me, respectful. It felt good, but it wasn't the goal. My phone stayed in my pocket, silent but heavy.
I checked it earlier.
My forum post was gaining traction, likes piling up. Jessica was at home, probably scrolling, her greed pulling her in. I pictured her, eyes glued to her screen, whispering to Susan about the next big thing. She'd invest everything, blind to the trap. The thought steadied me like a compass pointing true. At the gala, a man clapped my shoulder.
Heard you're making waves, Ed, he said. I smiled vague.
Just helping out, I replied. The letter in my hand felt like a shield, proof of who I could be. Jessica and Ruby saw failure. These people saw a giver. Soon they'd all see the truth.
I left the event, the night air cool against my face.
At home, Jessica sat in the living room, her phone glowing. Susan says, Next Gen's a goldmine, she said, her voice eager, not looking up. I'm putting everything in. Her fingers swiped, sealing her choice. I paused, my hand on the stair rail. Good luck, I said, my tone flat. Her eyes flicked to me, suspicious, but I was already moving. In my office, I shut the door, the lock clicking. The computer screen waited, dark, but ready. Jessica's words echoed. Everything, she'd said. Everything. My smile grew cold and sure. I sat down, my fingers brushing the phone. The next step was close and I was ready. The dining room was a mess. Coffee mugs scattered, a napkin crumpled on the floor. Jessica stood by the table, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice shrill. What do you mean? It crashed.
I lost 40,000. She spun, her eyes wild.
Mascara streaking her cheeks. Ruby hovered near the doorway, biting her nail, her phone dark in her hand. I sat at the table, stirring sugar into my coffee, the spoon clinking softly. Their panic was a symphony, and I was the conductor. Jessica slammed her phone onto the couch, the thug muffled by cushions. You did this, Ed? She screamed, pointing a trembling finger. Her hair was a tangled halo, her bracelet jangling. You sabotaged me, I raised an eyebrow, my face calm. Did I? I said, my voice low, almost amused. Her accusation had no teeth, no proof. I'd worked through my broker, clean and untraceable.
Next Gen stock had plummeted just as I'd planned.
Ruby shifted, her eyes darting between us.
Mum, maybe it's not him, she said, her voice small.
Jessica whirled on her. Don't defend him.
He's ruined us. Ruby flinched, her fingers tightening around her phone.
She looked lost, her confidence gone. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness sharp. Jessica's debts, credit cards, loans, had been her noose. She tied it herself, chasing Susan's promises of wealth. You chose where to put your money, I said, setting my mug down. Jessica's face twisted, her breath hitching. You knew, she spat. You knew it would fail. I shrugged, my silence a blade. She stormed closer, her heels clicking. I'll prove it, Ed. I'll drag you down with me. Her threat was empty, but her eyes burned. Ruby stayed quiet, her gaze fixed on the floor. A crack was forming between them, and I felt it widen. I stood, the chair scraping. Their eyes followed me, Jessica's furious.
Ruby's uncertain. I'm not your problem, I said, my voice steady.
You are. Jessica's mouth opened, but no words came. I walked out, their silence heavy behind me. In the hallway, I grabbed my coat, the letter of thanks from the charity still in my pocket.
Its weight grounded me, a reminder of who I was becoming. Outside, I climbed into my car, the engine humming to life.
Jessica's screams faded as I drove, the letter on the passenger seat catching the streetlights. The town was quiet, Fairfield's lawns neat under the dusk. I pushed the first domino and it felt right. My phone stayed silent, but I didn't need it now. The next move was waiting and I was ready. The charity event glowed with warmth. White tablecloths, soft lanterns, the clink of glasses.
I stood on a small stage, a framed letter of thanks in my hands.
Edward Cunningham's generosity has changed lives, the host said, his voice booming. The crowd clapped, their faces bright with admiration. I nodded, my smile modest, but inside I burned with quiet triumph. For years I'd been invisible. Now Fairfield saw me. I stepped down, shaking hands, the letter tucked under my arm. A woman in a blue dress squeezed my hand.
You're a hero, Ed, she said.
I murmured, thanks, my eyes scanning the room. The air smelled of roses and possibility. My donation, 50,000 to the shelter, had made waves and the ripples were reaching Jessica and Ruby. Across town, Jessica sat in the golf club, her cocktail glass trembling. The green stretched outside, the grass sharp under the sun, but the air inside was cold. Her friend Susan leaned over, her voice low. You're Ed, the one who gave all that money. Why didn't you say? Jessica's smile froze, her fingers tightening on the glass. It's complicated, she said, her voice thin. Another woman whispered, he's a saint. And you're so quiet about it. The word stung and Jessica's face flushed. Her status, her armor, was cracking. Ruby wasn't faring better. At home, she sat on her bed, her phone glowing with comments.
How can you trash your dad? One read.
He's helping people and you're whining. Another said, her post about me calling me a failure had backfired. She swiped, her hands shaking, and deleted it, but the damage was done. Her followers dropped, her inbox filled with criticism.
I didn't mean it, she whispered, but no one cared.
Her world built on likes was crumbling.
I left the event, the night air cool against my face.
The sunset painted the sky orange, a promise of something new. I'd spent years in their shadow, absorbing their scorn. Now they were the ones fading. Jessica's friends were pulling away, their invitations drying up. Ruby's online empire was shrinking, her confidence with it.
I felt no pity.
They'd built their cages and I'd handed them the keys. I drove home, the letter on the seat beside me. Its words, gratitude, respect, were a shield against their venom. My phone buzzed, a message from the mayor's office, an invite to a council event. My name was spreading, my actions speaking louder than their lies. I parked the house dark except for a single light. As I stepped out, a knock came at the door, sharp and desperate. I paused, my hand on the keys, and listened. The dining room smelled of damp carpet and defeat. Jessica stood before me, her hands clasped, her eyes red.
Ed, please, she said, her voice breaking.
We're sorry. We were wrong. Ruby lingered behind, tears streaking her face, her phone silent for once.
Dad, I didn't mean it, she whispered, her voice raw.
Their apologies were a performance, hollow as the cracked walls around us. I stood by the table, my arms crossed, unmoved. Jessica stepped closer, grabbing my hand. Her nails dug in, desperate. We're broke, Ed. The club shut me out. We need you. Her words were syrupy, but her eyes flickered with calculation. Ruby nodded, wiping her nose. My friends won't talk to me, she said, her voice small. I deleted the post, I swear. I pulled my hand free, the motion sharp. Their tears didn't touch me. I'd heard their lies before. You made your choices, I said, my voice cold as stone. Jessica's face crumpled, but her jaw tightened. You can't abandon us. she said, her tone shifting, accusatory. Ruby looked down, her shoulders shaking.
I saw her fear. Real maybe, but it changed nothing.
They'd mocked me, belittled me for years. Now they wanted salvation.
I wasn't their savior.
I turned, walking out, their pleas fading. Later, I sat in a realtor's office, the air crisp with fresh paint. A panoramic window framed Fairfield skyline and keys gleamed on the desk. "The house is yours," the realtor said, sliding the papers over.
I signed, my hand steady. The pen scratched loud in the quiet.
A new home, clean and mine, waited. No echoes of their voices, no ghosts of their scorn. The keys were cool in my hand, their weight a promise. I'd sold more bitcoins, enough to start fresh. Jessica and Ruby could keep the old house, its creaks and cracks a mirror of their lives.
I felt no guilt. Everyone gets what they earn, I said, my voice low, almost to myself.
The realtor smiled, unaware of the war I'd fought. She handed me the keys, their jingle bright. I drove to the new house, its windows dark but welcoming. I parked, staring at the clean lines, the empty rooms, waiting for a life I'd build alone. My phone buzzed. A message from the city council. They wanted me at an event, a speaker for their fundraiser. My name carried weight now, a currency Jessica and Ruby could never touch. I stepped out, the keys in my hand, when the phone rang again.
I answered, my voice calm. I'll be there, I said.
The city hall smelled of polished wood and pride. I stood at the podium, the weight of a brass metal cool in my hands. Edward Cunningham's $1 million donation will transform our community, the mayor said, his voice echoing. The crowd erupted, their applause a wave. I nodded, my face humble, but inside I soared. Jessica and Ruby sat in the back, their faces pale, their eyes fixed on me.
No one looked at them. They were ghosts in my moment. I scanned the room.
Wooden beams, flickering chandeliers, the scent of coffee lingering. Jessica clutched her purse, her knuckles white. Ruby hunched low, her phone hidden in her lap. I saw Susan, Jessica's golf club friend, turn away when Jessica leaned to whisper. The rejection was sharp, a blade in Jessica's pride. Ruby's shoulders shook, her usual bravado gone.
I felt no pity. They'd built this cage.
"Thank you," I said, my voice steady. "This is for Fairfield." The crowd cheered again, their faces warm, open. For years, I'd been the quiet man in the corner. Now I was their hero. The medal gleamed, a symbol of everything I'd earned. Jessica's lips moved, a silent mutter. "It's a lie." But no one cared. Ruby's eyes darted, seeking an escape that wasn't there. Later, I packed the last box in the old house. The dining room was a wreck. Cracked walls, a dusty table, the air heavy with neglect. My footsteps echoed as I carried boxes to the car. Jessica and Ruby could keep this place. Its creaks a mirror of their lives.
I didn't look back.
The keys to my new house jangled in my pocket, their sound bright like a bell. I drove to the new place, its windows catching the dusk. The air inside was clean, sharp with fresh paint. I set the metal on a bare shelf, its shine soft in the empty room. The silence was mine, not theirs. No arguments, no scorn, just space to breathe. I walked through the house, my steps light on the hardwood. This was freedom. Outside, Fairfield settled into evening, lawns glowing under streetlights. My phone stayed quiet, but the mayor's words rang in my head.
$1 million, a legacy.
Jessica and Ruby had lost more than money. Their status, their allies were gone. I'd taken nothing from them they hadn't thrown away first. I sat at the kitchen counter, the keys beside me, their edges catching the light. The house was still but alive with possibility. Then a knock came at the door, sharp, insistent. I stood, my hand brushing my phone. My fingers paused over the screen, ready. The new house was quiet, its minimalist living room bathed in evening light. The knock came again, louder, desperate. I opened the door, and there they were, Jessica, her face strewn with mascara, and Ruby, eyes red, clutching her arms.
"Ed, please," Jessica said, her voice cracking.
"We're done for. You have to help us." Ruby nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Dad, we messed up. We're sorry." Their words dripped with need, but I heard the old venom beneath. You've done nothing, Ruby added, her eyes flickering. But we need you now.
I stood in the doorway, my face a mask.
The room behind me smelled of fresh paint, the hardwood gleaming under a single lamp. A clock ticked on the wall, its rhythm steady. Come in, I said, my tone flat. They shuffled inside, Jessica's purse dangling, Ruby's sneakers scuffing the floor. The space felt too clean for their chaos. I closed the door, the click sharp. Jessica launched in, her hands ringing. The debts are crushing us, she said, her voice rising. The club's gone, my friend's gone. You're our only hope. Ruby sniffled, her eyes on the floor. No one talks to me anymore, she said.
I lost everything.
Their apologies were thin, a performance to save themselves.
I'd heard it before.
Their lies dressed in tears. I pulled my phone from my pocket, its cracked screen catching the light.
You think I've done nothing?
I said, my voice low, deliberate. I tapped the screen, opened the wallet app, and held it up. Green text glowed. 59 BTC, $5.9 million. Their jaws dropped, Jessica gasping, Ruby sinking onto the couch. I bought them in 2011, I said. 590, for you, for us. And you called me a failure. Jessica's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide.
You hid this? She stammered.
Ruby stared, tears spilling, but she said nothing. I lowered the phone, my gaze hard. You had your chance, I said.
Every day you chose to tear me down.
Now you live with it. The clock ticked louder, filling the silence. Their faces were frozen. The truth a weight they couldn't lift. I turned, walking to the door.
Ed, wait!
Jessica cried, falling to her knees, her hands clawing the air. Ruby sobbed, gripping the couch.
I didn't stop. You're cruel.
Jessica shouted, but her voice broke. I opened the door, the night air cool against my face. No, I said, not looking back.
Unfair.
I stepped outside, the door shutting with a thud. My car waited, its engine a soft hum as I started it. The sunset burned orange, a fire across the sky. I drove, the phone on the seat beside me. It screamed dark now. Their faces lingered in my mind, but not their pain. Only their shock, their realization. I'd shown them the truth, and it was enough. The terrace of my new house was my sanctuary, the morning air crisp with the scent of coffee. I sat at a glass table, my laptop open, documents spread before me. Another donation, $200,000 for a youth center, waited for my signature. The pen scratched softly, each stroke a step further from the past. Fairfield stretched beyond the railing, its roofs gold in the dawn. I was home, not just in this house, but in myself. Across town, Jessica and Ruby worked at a diner, their lives a stark contrast. The place was loud, reeking of fried potatoes and grease. Jessica wiped tables, her apron stained, her movements sharp with resentment. He did this to us, she muttered to a co-worker, tossing a rag onto the counter. Her voice was bitter but tired. Ruby carried a tray, her steps slow, her eyes downcast.
Mom, stop, she said, her voice flat.
We did this. The tray wobbled, plates clinking, and she steadied it, her phone silent in her pocket. I'd seen them once from a distance, their faces drawn, their pride gone. They worked to survive, their status a memory. I felt no joy in their struggle, only balance. They'd mocked me for years, called me nothing while I paid their way. Ruby's college, Jessica's jewels. I'd given everything and they'd spat it back. Now they faced the world they'd built. My laptop pinged. A message from the charity. Your gift will change lives.
I smiled, the words warming me.
The terrace was quiet, save for the rustle of leaves. I'd found purpose here in giving, in building. The cold wallet, still locked in a safe, held millions. But it wasn't the money that freed me. It was the choice to walk away, to live for myself. I stood, coffee mug in hand, and stepped to the railing. The sunset painted the sky, its colors soft, final. I thought of the old house, its creaks and shadows, and the years I'd spent there, shrinking under their words. I'd carried their weight too long, but no more.
I gave them everything, I said, my voice a whisper. Now I'm free.
The mug warmed my hands, the sky deepening to purple. Fairfield was mine now, not as a conqueror, but as a man who'd found his place. Jessica and Ruby would keep going, their lives their own to mend or break.
I didn't hate them. I didn't need to. I'd found something better myself.
The horizon glowed and I knew I was home. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.